Welcome to the TOK show with your host, Brandon Ahern. On today's show, we have Japanese Ambassador Mr. Hashimoto.
Yeah! Woo!
And an American politician in charge of foreign relations. Please welcome Mr. John Smith. It's an honor having both of you here today. Mr. Smith and Mr. Hashimoto will start off the show with a brief background on the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. This will include a flashback to the time before Pearl Harbor. Mr. Smith, Mr. Hashimoto, would you please give the audience an accurate reenactment of what happened leading up to the atomic bombing of Hiroshima?
Yes, I remember it clearly, just as if it was yesterday. It was a normal day when all of a sudden I received a telegram coming from the Japanese.
Watashi tachi wa anata ni Amerika o kogeki shinakeraba naranai.
This message coming from the Japanese was saying, and my translation is not the best, but it is saying, we shall attack you, America.
Well, that's weird. Japan would never attack the U.S.
Well, on December 7th, at 8 o'clock in the morning, Japanese pilots flew over Pearl Harbor, and at 8:10, the Japanese began dropping bombs on Pearl Harbor.
After the attack had subsided, the president and his advisors decided that an atomic bombing over Hiroshima may be necessary.
Thank you, Ms.
On August 6, 1994, the U.S. did in fact drop that atomic bomb.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Hashimoto would you like to give your background knowledge of the event?
Hai. Amerika wa ware no sekiyu hyoku wa saigo no waratata watashi tachi no kuni no ansen no tame ni ware wa Amerika hito o kogeki shinakeraba naranai satsuna.
What is he saying? What he's saying is that, from Japan's perspective, the reason behind Pearl Harbor was America was cutting off our oil supply was the last straw. For the safety of a country, we must attack the Americans, was what he roughly said. And what happened after the Japanese telegram corresponds with what Mr. Smith said.
However, from my people's perspective, Hiroshima was an unnecessary tragedy on America's behalf. My people were looking to surrender already. America just took things a little too far.
Very interesting. It seems that you two each have a somewhat different understanding of what actually happened up in Hiroshima. I think this is due to language. The differences in your languages have affected the manner you perceive the event. The different styles, your culture's recorded history, has affected the way it is translated into your interpretation. Even though this event is considered shared knowledge, language is one factor that affects how shared knowledge of the event is spread. Mr. Smith, you use words like necessary. However, Mr. Hashimoto used words like tragic and unnecessary. Mr. Smith, what would you like to say about your use of language of recounting the event?
Well, if Japan had just surrendered from the start, America would have not had to atomically bomb Japan. However, after Pearl Harbor, we decided it was necessary to respond, even if that meant forcing Japan's submission at any cost. I know that if Japan just had been reasonable, Hiroshima could have been avoided.
Mr. Hashimoto.
Well, Mr. Smith, I know for a fact that the Americans did not have to use the atom bomb to have Japan surrender. The Americans did this just to put my people down, the Japanese people down, by massacring hundreds of thousands of innocent Japanese civilians, when the Japanese only killed 2,000 military men and women.
Wow, things are getting heated up in here. This makes me ask, how many perspectives are shown in history? Which can also be asked, how do different perspectives affect the mindset of those receiving shared knowledge? I can tell there's a lot of emotion in here too. I think we can provide some insight on my questions for the viewers. Mr. Hashimoto, you first this time.
How could the Americans, who suffered absolutely nothing in retrospect to Hiroshima, how could they, who suffered nothing from this attack, possibly understand this tragedy of Hiroshima in the same way that we, the Japanese people and the Japanese nation, do? Just as no other people could. It is shared knowledge that the bombing was damaging, but not to the extent that my people know. It was tragic. Everyone lost their family and friends on that day. That is a mindset that America can never know.
Wow. Mr. Smith?
Of course, we're at different perspectives. Your allies view the Jews as unworthy of life, just basically a burden. However, certainly the Jews could not have thought of it this way, nor did most of the world. So, as for your mindset point, I don't think it really affects the knowledge itself, but merely how you interpret that knowledge.
Well, I'm able to do a correspondence check